I know you like to record, so let me tell you what's going on.
We're reading from Matthew, chapter 1, verses 1 through 7, 16 through 25. An account of the genealogy of Jesus the Messiah, the son of David, the son of Abraham. Abraham was the father of Isaac, and Isaac the father of Jacob, and Jacob the father of Judah and his brothers, and Judah the father of Perez, and Zerah by Tamar, and Perez the father of Hezron, and Hezron the father of Aram, and Aram the father of Amminadab, and Amminadab the father of Nahshon, and Nahshon the father of Salmon, and Salmon the father of Boaz by Rahab, and Boaz the father of Obed by Ruth, and Obed the father of Jesse, and Jesse the father of King David. And David was the father of Solomon by Bathsheba, the wife of Uriah, and Solomon the father of Rehoboam, and Rehoboam the father of Abijah, and Abijah the father of Asaph, and so forth, through the deportation to Babylon, the generations there and the generations after the return, until Jacob the father of Joseph, the husband of Mary, of whom Jesus was born, who is called Messiah. So all the generations from Abraham to David are 14 generations, and from David to the deportation to Babylon, 14 generations, and from the deportation to Babylon to the Messiah, 14 generations.
So you're probably wondering, why start with a genealogy? The answer is simply, we've come this far by faith. You and I have come leaning on 2 millennia of Jesus. But these Christians only had 50 years. And the Jews sitting just 2 rows across were asking them, how could Jesus be the Messiah? The Messiah is supposed to be alive. And where was the Messiah when the Romans destroyed the temple, the center of all faith, just a decade ago? The loss of the temple shattered everyone's religious life and caused people to reassess the foundations of their faith. So the early Christians started by standing on the shoulders of 42 generations of faith and placed Jesus at the end of the Abrahamic and Davidic lines. In other words, at the top of that totem pole. Each name represented a separate but important faith journey, and the list includes 5 women, exploding a long tradition of patriarchy. Even more important, the list includes our own Ruth, who loved Naomi, and David, who loved Jonathan, 2 same-gender loving couples exploding the heteronormative tradition. And the list mentions them with their later loves, Boaz and Bathsheba, suggesting that Naomi and David might have been bisexual. Why does that matter to us? Because their inclusion is no accident. They represent God's hand at disrupting the status quo to serve justice. God disrupts for the good of you and me and all humankind. So at the end of the genealogy, Matthew's gospel describes how God once again disrupts the course of history in the following verse. Joseph is the husband of Mary, of whom Jesus was born, who is called the Messiah. But the father of Jesus? The gospel doesn't say. Now it's your turn to be the chorus. Every
of Jesus the Messiah took place this way. When his mother Mary had been engaged to a husband, but before they lived together, she was found to be with child from the Holy Spirit. Joseph, being a righteous man and unwilling to expose her to public disgrace, planned to dismiss her quietly.
But just when he had resolved to do this, an angel of the Lord appeared to him in a dream and said, "Joseph, son of David, do not be afraid to take Mary as your wife, for the child conceived in her is from the Holy Spirit. She will bear a son, and you are to name him Jesus, for he will save his people from their sins."
All this took place to fulfill what had been spoken by the Lord through the prophet. "Look, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and they shall name him Emmanuel," which means God is with us.
When Joseph awoke from his sleep, he did as the angel of the Lord commanded him. He took her as his wife, but had no marital relations with her until she had borne a son, and he named him Jesus.
Now the birth of Jesus, the Messiah, took place in this way. When his mother Mary had been engaged to husband Joseph, but before they lived together, she was found to be with child from the Holy Spirit. Doesn't this verse bother you? We have angels and dreams and prophecies all over today's gospel. But Mary hears nothing, only that she's found to be with child from the Holy Spirit. In Luke's gospel, an angel visits Mary and tells her not to be afraid because she has found favor with God, who will bless her with child whom she shall call Jesus. Matthew, however, leaves her wondering in fear over the source of her morning sickness. Don't you wonder if Joseph ever tells her of his dream? Or does he remain silent in fear of his overwhelming doubts? Where's the sassy gay friend to tell her not to be afraid? Thank you, Daniel, for that lovely image last week. Some of us have awoken to morning sickness from an unwanted child. But most of us have also been there for another reason. Waking up to a morning sickness because we've come to the realization that we're gay or transgender. And now what? What about our neighbors who wake up to their realization? Are their loved ones going to have a dream like Joseph and do the right thing? Or are they going to remain silent and thus throw our neighbors into some kind of purgatory? As we have retold many times, Troy Perry awoke to that realization some 50 plus years ago. Fortunately, he had a sassy gay friend, and he birthed a church, the Metropolitan Community Churches. As Daniel asked us last Sunday, are you ready to be a sassy gay friend for your neighbor?
In the time of King Herod, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem asking, "Where is the child who had been born of the King of the Jews? for we have observed his star at the rising. We have come to pay him homage." When King Herod heard this, he was frightened, and all Jerusalem with him. And calling together the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Messiah was to be born.
They told him, "In Bethlehem of Judea, for so it has been written by the prophet. And you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah. For from you shall come a ruler, who is to shepherd my people, Israel."
Then Herod secretly called for the wise men and learned from them the exact time when the star had appeared. Then he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, "Go and search diligently for the child, and when you have found him, bring me word so that I may go and pay him homage." When they had heard the king, they set out, and there ahead of them went the star that they had been seeing at his rising, until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw that the star had stopped, they were overwhelmed with joy. On entering the house, they saw the child with his mother Mary, and they knelt down and paid him homage. Then, opening their treasure chests, they offered him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh.
And having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they left for their own country by another road.
Herod was a despot, a terrorist, and a sociopathic egotist. He killed 3 of his own sons. He oppressively taxed Jewish and Gentile citizens to pay for his grandiose buildings and private armies. Herod, who represents the worst of every politician, leader, and government that ever existed, is as much a central character as Jesus is in today's gospel readings. He must be foiled. And who does Matthew have to do that? 3 sassy gay friends. If you want to take one thing away from today's sermon, it's that the 3 magi are not 3 kings. Let me elaborate by reading a passage from the book Our Tribe by our past moderator, Reverend Elder Nancy Wilson. The 3 wise men were Zoroastrian priests. They were astrologers, magicians, ancient shamans from the royal courts of ancient Persia. They were the equivalent of Merlin of Britain. They were sorcerers, high-ranking officials, but not kings. Definitely not kings. But quite possibly, they were queens. We've always pictured them with elaborate, exotic, unusual clothing, quite festive. They were highly decorated and accessorized. But not until Nancy recognized that they were probably eunuchs, did she realize that never once did she imagine that their wives accompanied them on this trip. Deep down, she never thought of them as having wives. Also, wise eunuchs, shaman, holy men were the only ones who had the forethought to go shopping before they visited baby Jesus. This seems to me to be an obvious gay clue. They also have shamanistic dreams. They deceive King Herod and actually play the precise role that many other prominent eunuchs play in the Bible. They rescue the prophet, this time the Messiah of God, and foil the evil royal plot against God's anointed. It's classic gay eunuch drama. End of quote. That 3 wise eunuchs from Persia would foil King Herod's plan against God's anointed would remind Matthew's listeners of another biblical plot told in the book of Esther. And that plot also took place in Persia. during the time of deportation and exile, and was foiled by guess who? 12 sassy eunuchs.
Now after they had left, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream and said, "Get up, take the child and his mother and flee to Egypt, and remain there until I tell you. For Herod is about to search for the child to destroy him."
Then Joseph got up, took the child and his mother by night, and went to Egypt, and there remained until the death of Herod.
This was to fulfill what had been spoken by the Lord through the prophet. Out of Egypt I have called my son.
When Herod saw that he had been tricked by the wise men, he was infuriated, and he sent and killed all the children in and about Bethlehem who were 2 years old or under, according to the time that he had learned from the wise men.
Then this was fulfilled what had been spoken through the prophet Jeremiah. A voice was heard in Ramah, wailing and loud lamentation, Rachel weeping for her children. She refused to be consoled, because they are no more.
When Herod died, an angel of the Lord suddenly appeared in a dream to Joseph in Egypt and said, "Get up, take the child and his mother and go to the land of Israel, for those who are seeking the child's life are dead."
Then Joseph got up, took the child and his mother, and went to the land of Israel. But when he heard that Archelaus was ruling over Judea in a place of his father, Herod was afraid to go there.
And after being warned in a dream, he went away to the district of Galilee.
There he made his home in a town called Nazareth, so that what had been spoken through the prophets might be fulfilled. He will be called a Nazarene.
You've heard most of my sermon today, so this is just like the tail end. But after this morning, do you still have doubts that we, gay, lesbian, bisexual, pansexual, metrosexual, download, transgender, agender, bigender, queer, questioning intersex, allied people are in the Bible? We are there. We are there, but we've been hidden. And it takes brave and scandalous leaders, like our theologians like Nancy Wilson and Troy Perry, Tom Bohashi, who inspired much of what I've spoken to you this morning about. He has written in this incredible book, but also MC Sears, like Bob Goss, Mona West, Marcella Alphys Reed, who is studied in every seminary, well, every open and affirming seminary. Kittredge Cherry, they're all MC Sears. And they're there to shake loose our genealogy in the Bible. We are there. And their work inspires not only us, but queer Christians of all denominations. But despite this good news, today's gospel readings end on somewhat of a down and ominous note. Herod sends out an edict to kill every child under the age of 2. Historians debate whether or not this massacre ever occurred, but they do not debate Herod's many murderous acts of despotism. And maybe Matthew embellishes a little in an attempt to describe that despotism. And maybe Matthew wants to evoke a similar story that Moses was part of in Genesis. But no matter the reason, Jesus becomes a refugee and must seek asylum in Egypt. And later, after Herod's death, the threat continues under the rule of Herod's son. So when Jesus and his family return from Egypt, they must go into hiding in Galilee. And it seems that just as we are doing well, just as we are getting our head above water, just as we are experiencing the joy of coming out or getting civil rights or health benefits, somebody wants to knock us down and even get revenge. And this was true for Jesus. We long for the Christmas spirit to go on and on. But then the messiness of humanity returns in our lives. Sometimes I wonder if we've domesticated the Christmas story beyond its true meaning. That being God breaking into humanity, taking on human form in order to teach us and disrupt us from our failings. And finally, to give us the gift of Jesus, who can show us the way toward heaven on earth. But when we domesticate Christmas to simply watching TV specials and swapping presents and caroling and family dinners and lawn decorations, not that that's not fun. We reduce Christmas to a temporary elixir that merely dulls our pain and loneliness. Let's be honest. We need something far more life-giving and salvific. We need God's love. And God's power to disrupt despotic forces like Herod. And the violence caused by every form of hatred. God will protect us. God will guide us to safety and peace. Even in our own lives, in the lives as MCCers, we've been through a lot since Troy founded the church 50 years ago. We cannot forget the 32 lives lost by a fire set by an arson in the upstairs lounge in New Orleans back in the 70s. And we cannot forget the more than 6,000 MCCers who have lost their lives to AIDS because of despotic foot dragging by the U.S. government. We've come this far by faith. Even today, despotic actions at the border are simply despicable when viewed by today's gospel reading. Imagine Jesus today escaping Herod's rule in Central America and seeking asylum in the U.S. No doubt he'd be turned away at the border, if not separated from Mary and Joseph. Should we not treat each asylum seeker as if they were the next Jesus? Still we do have victories. Victories like Taz Walton. Oh, right. I promised to let you know about my dad. He's still with us. Still having dreams. And still talking to God. A while back, he stopped thanking God for each morning he awakes. Instead, he thanks him for the amazing life given to him. For the amazing legacy of children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. So every Christmas is a reminder that God is with us. It's a reminder that no matter the horrors in our lives, God surrounds us with lasting and healing love. It's a reminder that God breaks into our lives to give us an opportunity despite our setbacks, an opportunity to birth something new. Christmas is a reminder that salvation is not just at the end of our lives, but at birth and at every next moment. And every next moment is a time to be joyful and triumphant. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Please join us in singing our hymn of response, number 144, Hark the Herald Angels Sing.